Okay, another little short video. This one is about the funding that we have in Scotland. We have lots of entities that are standalone. So Scotland has a separate legal system than England, has a separate NHS. I'm going to talk about that in the next wee segment. And things like roading infrastructure, like most things in the UK, they have this thing called the Barnett formula. What they do is they basically take money off Scotland and they take money off all the components in the UK. So Scotland, England, Northern Ireland and Wales, they put it into one bucket, and then the UK doles back. The UK government, which is effectively the English government because it's chosen by the English people every 4 or 5 years, I think it's every 4 years, the English people choose who will govern the whole of the UK. That is what happens, okay? And it sounds insane for anyone who comes from a normal country, which of the 198 countries in the world, almost all are normal, meaning you either have a democracy or a dictatorship or a communist government that was voted in and will never ever leave, right? But that's still the various forms of normality that there are. You can see right now that I'm stuck in traffic. Now, I've lived in New Zealand, I've lived in the USA, I've lived in quite a few countries, South Africa. Now, we have 5.8 million people, almost 6 million people. Come on, Rumble, move the other side. Almost 6 million people. Our country has grown by a minuscule level over the last 300 years. And if you compare Scotland with the growth of other countries around it, Norway, England, I just mentioned in the last video, we used to be 1/3 the population. Rumble, come on. 1/3 the population of England, and now we are 1/10 the population of England by design. That is to reduce the voter numbers that you have in Scotland, thereby making it impossible to have any power of veto against the English voter. So, because as a result, Scottish people haven't bred less; they've just left. Like me, I live in Slovenia because there's no opportunity for me in this country, right? And there is limited opportunity here, and when you do get the jobs here, they pay a lot less than what they do in England, even in the same sectors, okay? So you got to ask yourself, I'm going between a very short distance. So Edinburgh and Glasgow are actually quite close to each other, less than 100 miles, I think less than 50 miles. I need to check that, but very, very close. And yet between these two major cities, our capital and our largest city, we have a dual carriageway. It's pathetic, right? Now, up where I'm from, in the Highlands, we've actually got single lane roads still. We have to basically pull over or reverse a kilometre to get to the passing lane. So this is all a direct result of the lack of investment of our money back into our country. This Barnett formula, what it does is it's supposed to take money and dole it back depending on where it needs it, and that fluctuates over time. One place might mean the other. The actual reality is Scotland gets back, from what it gives, Scotland gets back about 60% of what it gives. It means it's paying 40% too much, right? That's figures recently released by I'm trying to get this off Gordon from IndyCar, because he works for Broadcasting Scotland, what the actual government entity was, but it's a UK government entity that actually found this out. It's amazing. Sometimes you actually get the BBC telling the truth. Sometimes they serve the system, right? It's the same with these government entities. So you ask yourself, why have we got this tiny little road here? And that's what it is, direct result. The same reason we don't have international ports. I mean, you could probably class Edinburgh Airport and Glasgow Airport as international airports, but they only go to small routes, right? The reason they're not, let's say you compare Scotland, we've got a bigger population than New Zealand. New Zealand's airports, Wellington and Auckland, have international travel. You can go to South America and all sorts of places. Australia, of course. And they used to have 3.5 million when I moved to New Zealand, and they have 4.5 million now. They've almost caught up to the Scottish population, as have Norway. Why are all these countries, especially a country like New Zealand, How are they managing to increase their population? People make jokes about the weather. Well, Norway's got worse weather than we have, and arguably some parts of New Zealand is worse than Scotland as well. Are worse than Scotland. So it's not that. It has to be something else. Could it be what we already know is that if you were to take New Zealand or Norway and take away 40% minimum of their yearly income, how would they look? Now, of course, that's based upon what Scotland can produce right now. If Scotland had that 40% extra coming into it to build the infrastructure, the income would also increase. So you can't just see it as Scotland's losing X amount of money. It's actually, it would be impossible to work out how much we're actually losing, but it would be definitely far more. Because let's say, for example, we were to do what New Zealand does and actually make the most of our tourism, make the most of our industry, remembering that we're smack bang in the middle of Europe, not in the middle of Europe, but you know, we have easy access to all of Europe. All of Western Europe is easy access. You know, we're not actually that far from the USA if you take it as a trade route. So New Zealand's way down the south there. How are they flourishing so much? Well, the answer's obvious. They're not run by England anymore since 1901. Arguably 1860, but I mean 1901 is when they actually fully broke free. Or is it 1907? Roundabouts. Sorry, I might be getting the date mixed up with the oil boom in America. I think it might be 1907 actually. Anyway, around about circa that amount of time, that time. So here we are driving between the two greatest cities in Scotland, and we're on a dual carriageway. And the thing is, if you look around at the side of the motorway, it's not like you have in England where you couldn't take more space. You can clearly see there's a lot of, you know, countryside either side. It'd be very easy to widen this. There's just no mandate to do so. Why? Because there's no money. Because that's doled out by England. Because the one thing that is merged is our license plates, our the traffic, the roading situation in the UK is linked. It's one thing that will have to be separated when we get independence, as well as the motorways that all need to be well, not need to be, but they could be separated and called something like N1 for National Highway 1, blah blah blah. Oh, my back. Right. So I just wanted to point that out. That here's just one prime example that's impossible for someone who's a unionist mind to argue with. The reason why Scotland doesn't have good roading infrastructure, it's got good infrastructure as far as the condition of it is taken care of as much as possible. We've got roads in Edinburgh that I can probably show you later on. We've got cobbled roads which, instead of fixing them properly, they get fixed. They put down a little bit of tar and they smack it down with a spade. It's pathetic. But if you don't have much money to spend, that's what you've got to do. Things are built to last in Scotland, so the one good thing we have on our side is that are built, except for buildings that are made by the British government that fall down within a few years, like Margaret Thatcher era housing that was built. It's all fallen down and being demolished now. The things that we actually build as part of our culture in Scotland are solid sandstone buildings. Another thing I wanted to mention there is we have a separate culture. You can feel when you're in Scotland. If you're a person who says I can feel them in Britain, but I can't feel them in Scotland, then you just have you don't have decent senses. Your senses are lacking. You know, if you can't feel, I mean, you can put me blindfolded in Scotland, all right? Spin me around in a circle, take the blindfold off, I'm in the countryside. I know I'm in Scotland, all right? And then as soon as I speak to people, even if I walk down the street and it's in a town I don't know, and it's filled with foreigners, tourists, right? I'll still know I'm in Scotland, right? And I still know when I'm in England. I know the English culture very well. I love England. It's a great country. It's not my country. It shouldn't be running my country, but it is. And you've got, for example, you know, inversely, when you look at this two-lane road linking our two greatest cities, we have HS2, the high-speed rail link, HS1, HS2. None of these things serve Scotland. They serve England, but we still pay our 10% of it. We still are locked into 10% of English £2 trillion debt, right? Meanwhile, our actually arguably poorer, well, which should be poorer neighbour, Norway, have a £1 trillion surplus to share among their 4.2 million people, I think it may be. No, I think it might be approaching 5. They're catching up with us rapidly. Why? They don't have this parasite linked to them sucking their lifeblood out of them, preventing their growth. And this road is a prime example. You look at between the fjords in Norway, and you compare it with what we have here. This is a joke. So the most impressive thing we probably have is the Forth Road Bridge and maybe the bridge to Skye. We don't have all these linking tunnels that they're talking about building. Between the fjords and Norway. We don't have the roading infrastructure they have, and we certainly don't have the slush what's it called? Not a slush fund. The petty cash, or the I can't remember the name of the fund. The sovereign wealth fund. That's it. We don't have that. What Norway has. There's only one reason for it. We have a parasitic entity known as the English government, which is better known to most in the UK as the UK government, but it is the English government. And this is why England, when people in England moan about, oh, well, how come we don't have a devolved parliament? You do. Your devolved parliament just gets to say what happens in your country and ours. Ours doesn't get to say half of what happens in our own country, let alone nothing of what happens in yours. Actually, there is some things where Scotland can veto, and I want to get rid of that as well. I don't think Scotland should have any choice in what happens in England, because, well, our choices should be for the betterment of our own country. Same as what Trump always talks about, what's best for America. Well, that's right. If you run a country, you should be doing what's best for your country. As I said in the previous video, I do not care if someone from Pakistan or Nigeria runs Scotland. As long as they live here to get citizenship, and every decision they do is for the best interests of Scotland. I'm happy with that. That's not nationalist talk, is it? That's not right-wing nationalism. So yeah, this one was just to point out the infrastructure. NHS, I'll show you very soon. It's also different. Scottish legal system, different. Scottish tax system, well, that's the Crown. That's the what do they call it? MRCH or something. I don't know. HMRC. That's what it is. So they take in the money and they give us back like pocket money, a few percentage. And every year, the money that doesn't go back to Scotland prevents the next year's growth and the next year's growth, and that compounding growth and improvement of your country. I don't want to say too much about growth. It's not all about growth. Growth is actually a lie that is spread around the world. It's for no other reason than to justify the monetary system. Just understand that. Whenever you hear growth, what you're hearing is we want to justify this central banking cartel. It's creation of money at a whim that is not linked to any actual wealth. That is the only reason the term growth is used again and again and again. What you need is improvement and efficiency. Those are the only two things that really matter. Improvement of life, improvement of infrastructure. And that improvement, part of that is efficiency, Six Sigma, that kind of stuff. Alright, I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks, bye.